Imagine for a second that you're 24 years old. You did everything you were told to do. You studied 18 hours a day. Your parents sold the family gold to pay for your engineering degree, and you have the piece of paper that proves you're educated. Now imagine you're standing in a line that stretches for over a mile under the scorching sun. You aren't in line for a concert. You aren't in line for the new iPhone. You're standing in a stampede of 93,000 people applying for 62 positions as a messenger in a government office. A job that requires knowing how to ride a bicycle and make tea. This isn't fiction. This happened in Uttar Pradesh, India, and it reveals something terrifying about one of the world's fastest growing economies. My goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month. I would be very grateful if you could subscribe. Stay tuned for the video. We keep hearing that India is the next superpower, the economic engine of the world. Investment bankers in New York and London are salivating over the charts, circling India like sharks who just caught the scent of opportunity. But if you look under the hood, the engine is making a terrifying noise. Is the growth real? Or are we witnessing one of the greatest economic illusions of the 21st century? Today we're diving deep into the dark reality of the Indian economy and what it means for global investors and the future of emerging markets. This might just be the trap nobody's talking about. Let's start with what economists call the jobless growth paradox. On paper, India looks incredible. While the UK stagnates and China deals with a real estate crisis, India posts growth numbers of 7 to 8% year after year. But here's the disturbing twist. The GDP is going up, but the jobs aren't coming with it. Think about it this way. Imagine you own a bakery. Last year you made 100 loaves of bread using 10 bakers. This year you bought an automated production line. Now you make 500 loaves, but you only need 2 bakers. Your revenue went up 500%. You're profitable, but the 8 workers you laid off, they're struggling to feed their families. That's India right now. The economy is growing in a way that creates value for corporations and shareholders without creating employment for the masses. Nearly half of the young, educated workforce under 25 cannot find a job. 45% unemployment among college graduates. Let that sink in. You might think, maybe they just need better skills or more hustle. But let me paint you a picture from January 2022. Thousands of young men are standing on railway platforms across Bihar. But there are no trains moving. The tracks are blocked. Protesters are throwing stones, facing down police batons, setting fires. Was this a political revolution? No. This was a riot over a job application. The Indian Railways announced 35,000 job openings. 12.5 million people applied. That's more than the entire population of New York City applying for jobs that would fit inside a large stadium. When the exam format changed unexpectedly, frustration erupted into violence. When you have people burning trains because they can't get a job checking tickets, your impressive GDP number becomes irrelevant. This brings us to what I call the ticking demographic time bomb. Business news channels love talking about India's demographic dividend. The logic seems simple. India is young, with a median age of 28, while China and Europe are aging rapidly. This youth bulge should be an economic superpower, right? Here's the problem. A young population is only an asset if they have jobs and opportunity. If they don't, it's not a dividend. It's a liability. It's a powder keg. Every single year, 12 million young Indians enter the workforce. That's roughly the population of Pennsylvania looking for work annually. Does the economy create 12 million quality jobs to absorb them? Not even close. This creates what sociologists call waithood, a state of suspended adulthood. Go to any small town in North India and you'll see it. Walk to a bridge or town square in the evening. You'll find hundreds of young men just standing there. They aren't working. They aren't studying. They're waiting. Waiting for a government exam result that's been delayed for 3 years. Waiting for a call that never comes. In local slang, they call it time pass. It sounds harmless, almost quaint. But it's a social tragedy unfolding in real time. These are men in their physical and intellectual prime, stuck in limbo. They can't afford housing. In a traditional society where marriage requires financial stability, they can't get married. They can't start families or build lives. So now you have millions of young men who are unemployed, frustrated, and have access to the cheapest mobile data in the world. What happens? They scroll social media for hours. They get angry. They fall down radicalization rabbit holes, whether political or religious. The demographic dividend everyone celebrates is curdling into potential disaster. And here's the brutal timeline. India has roughly 20 years to get rich before it gets old. Demographics aren't destiny, but they set boundaries. If India doesn't get these young people off street corners and into productive employment now, the country will hit what economists call the middle-income trap, stuck between cheap labor and advanced innovation, but never breaking through to prosperity. But why aren't the factories coming? Why is Apple expanding in Vietnam instead of going all in on India? That brings us to the Make in India Mirage. Do you remember the mechanical lion logo? A decade ago, the Indian government launched a massive campaign called Make in India. The promise was simple: transform India into a global manufacturing powerhouse. Replace the Made in China label on your toaster with Made in India. 10 years later, let's check the scoreboard. Yes, Apple assembles iPhones in India now, and that makes headlines. But if you zoom out from that one shiny example, the picture gets ugly fast. The manufacturing sector's share of GDP has flatlined around 15%. The goal was to reach 25%. We're not even close. Here's what really happened. When companies started leaving China due to trade tensions and rising costs, they didn't rush to India. They went to Vietnam, Thailand, and Bangladesh. Why? Because Vietnam rolls out the red carpet for foreign investment. India rolls out red tape. If you want to build a factory in India, you first have to negotiate with hundreds of small landowners because property records are a bureaucratic nightmare. Then you deal with complex labor laws that make it nearly impossible to scale up or down with demand. Then you hit high import tariffs on components. India erected these tariffs to protect domestic industries, but the unintended consequence was devastating. By blocking imports of manufacturing components, they killed their own ability to become export competitive. Indian manufacturers aren't designing semiconductors or advanced machinery. They're assembling products from imported parts. The value added is minimal, and the profit margins are razor thin. So, the Make in India dream is stuck in what tech people call development hell, perpetually 2 years away from success. And here's the tragedy. Even if India did attract massive factory investment tomorrow, there's a deeper problem. Do they have workers with the skills to run modern manufacturing? That brings us to what I call the Great Indian Education Scam. Pull up LinkedIn right now and search for mechanical engineer in India. You'll find thousands of profiles. Now look closer at what these engineers actually do. How many are designing machines or building infrastructure? Almost none. They're working in call centers, doing data entry, working sales jobs, or spending years preparing for government exams. India has turned higher education into a mass production factory that churns out degrees, not skills. Multiple employability studies estimate that nearly 80% of Indian engineering graduates are unemployable in the knowledge economy. 80%. They can't write functional code. They can't solve complex problems. They spent 4 years memorizing textbooks to regurgitate answers onto exam papers, then forgot everything a month later. The country is full of what locals call mushroom colleges, universities that pop up overnight in random towns, often owned by politicians or businessmen, selling degrees that hold almost no value in the job market. Parents invest their entire life savings, believing an engineering degree is a golden ticket to the middle class. When that ticket turns out to be worthless, it bankrupts families emotionally and financially. India is selling hope to the hopeless and charging a premium for it. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. While the middle class drowns in worthless degrees and student debt, there's a segment of India that's partying like there's no tomorrow. Welcome to the K-shaped nightmare. Picture the letter K. One arm shoots upward at a sharp angle, the other crashes downward. The vertical line in the middle represents the pandemic. The two arms represent two completely different Indias emerging from it. If you live in South Delhi, Mumbai, or Bangalore's wealthy neighborhoods, the economy is absolutely roaring. Mercedes-Benz India recorded its highest sales ever. Lamborghini is sold out for the year. Luxury apartments are selling for $10 to $15 million within days of listing. This is India 1, the top 10%, living in a parallel reality of prosperity. Now look at the bottom arm of the K. This is India 2, the other 90%. While luxury car dealerships celebrate, sales of entry-level motorcycles have crashed to levels not seen in a decade. In rural India, a motorcycle isn't a toy. It's a critical work tool. When people stop buying them, it means they're financially broken. Let's go even smaller. Let's talk about biscuits. A packet of Parle G biscuits costs 5 rupees, roughly 6 cents. It's the cheapest source of calories you can buy in India. Sales of these basic biscuits have declined. People aren't cutting back because they're on a diet. They're cutting back because they can't afford 6 cents. According to Oxfam's wealth reports, the top 1% of India's population owns more than 40% of the total wealth. Meanwhile, the bottom 50%, that's over 700 million people, owns just 3% of the wealth. This is what some economists call the billionaire Raj. India has replaced British colonial extraction with a homegrown concentration of capital so extreme it warps economic reality. You wake up and check your phone on a network owned by Reliance. You fly through airports managed by Adani. You turn on lights powered by Tata. 5 or 6 massive conglomerates dominate entire sectors of the economy. This concentration stifles competition, kills innovation, and breeds what economists politely call crony capitalism. Political connections matter more than merit. And while billionaires add zeros to their net worth, the people who actually feed the country are literally dying. There's a popular slogan in India: Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, hail the soldier, hail the farmer. It paints this romantic picture of the noble farmer in a green field, the backbone of the nation, feeding billions. Now let me show you the reality. If you want to see the true face of Indian agriculture, look at suicide statistics. In a single year, over 11,000 farmers died by suicide. That's 30 farmers taking their own lives every single day, more than 1 farmer per hour. While you're watching this video, 2 people have likely consumed pesticide because they couldn't repay loans of just a few $1,000s. This is the dark heart of the economy. India prides itself on sending rockets to the moon and launching digital payment systems, yet it cannot figure out how to keep the people who feed the nation from killing themselves. Agriculture employs nearly half the workforce but generates less than 20% of GDP. It's a mathematical recipe for guaranteed poverty. So if the farm is a death trap, where do you go? You migrate to the city, but the city has its own way of killing you slowly. Take a deep breath right now. If you're in New Delhi during winter, don't. You're literally inhaling the equivalent of smoking 20 cigarettes a day just by existing. We tend to think of pollution as an environmental problem, but in India, it's an economic tax that nobody talks about. The World Bank estimates air and water pollution costs India roughly 8% of its GDP annually. Think about that. If economic growth is 7% and pollution destroys 8% of value through healthcare costs, lost productivity, and premature deaths, is India actually growing? Or is it just burning the furniture to heat the house? This is why wealthy Indians are running for the exits. If you want to know whether a country has a bright future, watch what millionaires do with their money. Right now, they're leaving in droves. India consistently ranks as one of the top countries for millionaire emigration. Thousands of high-net-worth individuals are surrendering their Indian passports every year. Why? It's not just about tax optimization or business expansion, it's about quality of life. What's the point of having $10 million in the bank if your children's lungs are being destroyed? A millionaire in Delhi breathes the same toxic air as a street sweeper. Money can't buy clean air when the entire city is a gas chamber. They're buying golden visas in Dubai and Portugal because they've essentially voted no confidence in India's future. And while the rich evacuate and farmers despair, there's one final threat that nobody's preparing for. It's coming for the one sector of the Indian economy that actually works: the IT industry. For 30 years, India had a money-printing machine called labor arbitrage. The math was simple. Hire a software developer in San Francisco for $150,000 a year, or hire a developer in Bangalore for $15,000. The work quality might be slightly lower, but at a 90% discount, who cares? It was a no-brainer for Western companies. This model built India's modern middle class. It created Infosys, Wipro, TCS, and employed millions. But that model is about to drive off a cliff, and the name of the cliff is generative AI. ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot, And dozens of other AI tools don't just write poetry and answer trivia questions. They write code, and they write it fast. AI excels at replacing entry-level, repetitive, rule-based tasks. Guess what? Roughly 70% of the Indian IT workforce does exactly that. Entry-level, repetitive, rule-based coding and support work. If an AI tool can do the work of 10 junior programmers, why would an American bank hire 10 contractors in Bangalore? They won't. The offshore call center industry, which employs hundreds of thousands, faces potential extinction within a decade. India spent 30 years training humans to behave like efficient robots, just as actual robots arrived to take those jobs. The Indian IT industry keeps insisting they'll move up the value chain, focus on AI development instead of implementation. But here's the problem. Moving up the value chain requires world-class education, research infrastructure, and a culture of innovation. India has been underinvesting in all three for decades. So, here we are. We've looked under the hood of the shiny sports car that is the Indian economy. We found an engine creating growth without jobs. We found a demographic fuel tank that's leaking potential. We found a steering wheel controlled by a handful of monopolies. We found an education system producing credentials instead of capability. And we found an environmental crisis that's making the country unlivable for the people who can afford to leave. Does this mean India is doomed? Not necessarily. India is a nation of survivors who have endured colonialism, partition, and countless crises. The country has remarkable entrepreneurs, brilliant minds, and incredible resilience. But optimism isn't a strategy. Hope isn't a policy. Blaming Western media bias won't change the fact that engineering graduates can't find work. Claiming criticism is anti-national won't feed the 800 million people who depend on subsidized government grain to eat. Pretending India is already a superpower while the fundamentals are broken isn't patriotism, it's delusion. The trap is real, and it's tightening. The combination of automation eliminating service sector jobs, climate change devastating agriculture, extreme inequality crushing the middle class, and poor governance blocking reform is creating a perfect storm. The next 10 years will determine the trajectory of the next 100. If India doesn't radically reform its education system, break up monopolies, fix its infrastructure, and create an environment where businesses can actually operate efficiently, the demographic dividend will become a demographic disaster. The dream of superpower status will remain exactly that, a dream that never materializes. Now, I want to make something clear. This analysis isn't about rooting against India. Quite the opposite. 1 billion people deserve better than false promises and manipulated statistics. They deserve an economy that actually works for them, not just for billionaires and foreign investors skimming profits off the top. For those of you watching from outside India, pay attention. This matters globally. India is the world's most populous country. If this experiment fails, if 1 billion young people are locked out of prosperity, the geopolitical consequences will reshape everything. Migration pressures, political instability, and resource conflicts don't stay contained within borders. For investors, the lesson is clear. Be extremely careful about confusing a stock market boom with actual economic health. You can make money in Indian equities while the broader economy is broken. That's the definition of a K-shaped recovery. But understand the risks. When inequality reaches extreme levels, things can unravel quickly. So what do you think? Is the India growth story real, or is it a bubble waiting to burst? Are we watching the rise of a superpower or the creation of a massive economic trap? Are you seeing this K-shaped reality in your own country? Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear your perspective, your story, not what the news anchors are saying. And if you found this deep dive valuable, if this gave you a perspective you're not hearing anywhere else, hit that subscribe button. We don't just read the headlines here. We read between the lines and follow the money to see what's really happening. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.